Thank you for introducing me. Good morning, everyone. I am Dr. Marukin from the Catholic University of Korea, Ujung St. Mary Hospital. Today, I'm going to talk about DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulopathy, how the concept has evolved, and accordingly, how it can be applied in clinical practice. When I was first requested to give a presentation about DIC, I felt like I was stuck in a huge storm. Still, DIC is regarded as one of the most difficult phenomena in critical ill patients. Many patients with DIC were very difficult to manage. I heard that many medical students attend this symposium, so I will begin with basic hemostasis physiology. This is content that I will present today. Okay, let's begin with the basic bleeding control process. When vessels are injured, platelets adhere to injured endocellular cells and subendocellular matrix. Activate platelet secretes several substances. This substance recruits regional platelet to adhesion and aerating to form platelet plug. Also, platelet secretes vasoactive materials to enhance vasoconstriction. This slide shows classic coagulation cascade. Intrinsic pathway is initiated from activation of factor 12 by high molecular weight kininogen and prekallikrein, which is sequentially activate factor 10. Extrinsic pathways begin with factor 7 activation and consequently activate factor 10. In common pathway, activate factor 10 catalyze factor 2 prothrombin to activate factor 2 thrombin and make fibrin from fibrinogen. Activate factor 13 cross-links polymerase thrombin and add resistance to fibrinolysis by plasmin. After hemostasis, fibrin clump began to degrade. Thrombin activate endocellular cell to produce urine plasmin activator and tissue plasmin activator. They convert plasmin into form plasmin that can degrade fibrin. Thrombin in the presence of thrombomodulin activate protein C. It inhibits thrombin formation by inactivating factor 5 and 8. Thrombomodulin also enable the conversion of thrombin activable fibrinolysis inhibitor to its active form, which inhibits fibrinolysis. This image summarizes three phases of hemostasis. Hemostasis begins with platelet plug formation in injured site. It involves primarily the adhesion activate platelet to damage endothelium. Simultaneously, activate coagulation process form fibrin clot. After hemostasis, blood flow is re-established by fibrinolysis. Then let's see DIC. Historically, DIC was first recognized in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly in association with sepsis and obstetric complications. The hallmark feature of DIC is that clinical bleeding and histological systemic clot formation occur simultaneously. Initially, it was regarded as consumptive coagulopathy, characterized by excessive clot formation leading to the depletion of coagulation factors and platelets. This is schematic image of DIC what I learned during medical student and trainee. Bleeding from trauma activate the coagulation process, and severe bleeding leads to significant consumption of clotting factors, which in turn causes a shortage of necessary factors and exacerbate the bleeding. The use of anticoagulant agent was proposed to stop this vicious cycle, but this was criticized that the treatment used in bleeding condition actually worsened the bleeding. However, in addition to trauma, there are various causes that make DIC. From severe infection, burn, thermal injury, solid and hematologic neoplasm, and other many conditions can occur DIC. Then I will speak about pathophysiology of representative etiologies. First, sepsis. There are several definitions for sepsis, but recently it is regarded as life-threatening organ failure that results from widespread dysregulated host response to infection. Previously, sepsis literally means septicemia, culture-positive bacteremia, and concept of systemic inflammatory response syndrome was added to infection. Patient response to severe infection like fever, tachycardia, leukocytosis, and other systemic inflammatory response were important in sepsis diagnosis. And multi-organ failure is emphasized in recent concept of sepsis. So, sequential organ failure assessment, SOFA score, is used in diagnosis of sepsis, and pathophysiology of multi-organ failure is closely related to pathophysiology of DIC development in sepsis patient. The precise pathophysiology of sepsis is so profound that there are time limitations to explain them all. In response pathogens, cells undergo pyroptosis and other pro-inflammatory process. During this process, various cytokine inflammatory mediators such as DMPS, interleukins, toll-like receptor 4, and TNF-alpha are secreted. This activates various cells, including platelet, monocyte, lymphocyte, and damage endothelium. Consequently, the coagulation process is activated and regulatory antithrombotic mechanism is disrupted, and fibrinolysis to remove formed blood clot is inhibited. As a result, thrombosis is formed in small vessels. Microthrombi named immunothrombosis are disseminated systemically and cause Wolff organ dysfunction. Activated protein C and antithrombin, which showed antithrombotic effect during coagulation cascade, shows anti-inflammatory effect here. Next is trauma. I will explain pathophysiological coagulopathy in trauma in this slide briefly. Trauma and shock stimulate thrombomodulin release from endothelium. It binds thrombin and forms thrombin-thrombomodulin complex, which can activate protein C. This activated protein C suppresses prothrombinase factor 5 and 10, consequently it suppresses thrombin formation. Activated protein C also degrades plasminogen activator inhibitor, and finally, they accelerate fibrinolysis. Additionally, consumptive coagulopathy and other etiologies aggravate bleeding tendency. This slide shows microcirculation trauma model of rat. 30 minutes after trauma, microthrombus was observed in mesenteric venule. 3 hours later, microthrombus was dissolved, but extravasation of leukocytosis and RBC were increased. Trauma patients would meet even worse situation like trauma-induced coagulopathy. Acute traumatic coagulopathy, which was explained previously. Early thrombin generation activate protein C. It can release T-plasminogen activator and deplete fibrinogen. As mentioned before, fibrinolysis-based coagulopathy can accelerate in trauma patient. Additionally, suboptimal resuscitation would aggravate coagulopathy. Coagulant factors can be diluted from excessive fluid infusion, acidosis, and hypothermia that uncontrolled sufficiently also can decrease coagulation activity. Let's see DIS pathophysiology in pregnant women. In placenta, hemorrhage is prevented by increasing expression of tissue factors and enhancing its activity. Of course, anticoagulation mechanisms such as protein C and CS are also produced to prevent unnecessary hypercoagulation in order to maintain blood flow for supplying oxygen and nutrients to the fetus. However, overall coagulation activity increases during pregnancy, especially during third trimester. Plasminogen activator inhibitor, which block fibrinolysis, increase. As a result, coagulation activity increases, fibrinolytic activity decreases. Usually, balance between coagulation and anticoagulation system is well controlled. However, like placenta abruption situation, its integrity might be disrupted. Then hypercoagulable materials like large amount of tissue factors release to maternal circulation. Active circulation coagulation cascade and propagate inflammatory response. Consequently, it can become systemic uncontrolled thrombin generation and DIC. Cancer have somewhat similar and somewhat different complicated pathophysiology. Cancer cells express several tissue factors for coagulants such as cysteine, protease, and mucins. It can activate coagulation cascade and form thrombus. So, cancer patients are vulnerable for DVT, PT, and thrombotic microangiopathy in several organs, especially in postoperative immobilized with intravascular catheter patient. On the contrary, malignant cell can express plasminogen activator and cause hypofibrinolytic state. This can increase possibility of spontaneous ICH or other spontaneous bleeding. Recent chronic inflammation is one of the main issues in cancer physiology. Cancer cells are secreting several inflammatory cytokines. Interleukin 6, one of the representative pro-inflammatory cytokines, release on tissue factor expression and enhance fibrin formation. On the contrary, TNF-alpha can decrease platelet activation and inhibit thrombi formation. Various inflammatory cytokines interfere normal coagulation cascade, and many coagulation factors are consumed during this process. These all produce DIC. Then let's talk about type of DIC. First, overt versus non-overt. Overt DIC is defined as stress and compensation hemostatic system, often at an irreversible stage, while non-overt DIC involves stress but compensate hemostatic system. ISTH proposed diagnostic framework distinct from overt DIC scoring system, and it will be discussed later. In non-overt DIC, systemic thrombin generation may be utilized by the anticoagulant system under regulated endothrombin or remain insufficient to meet overt DIC. So, repeated DIC score measurements are mandatory for monitoring progression from non-overt to overt DIC. Endocellular regulatory anticoagulant system, including protein C, thrombomodulin, antithrombin, and tissue factor pathway are transition overridden in controlled DIC, but swiftly restored when the causal factors are resolved through the surgical procedure. In uncontrolled DIC, endothelium is injured, switching from anti to procoagulant state and from pro to antifibrinolytic, such as sepsis or in late trauma phase. Thrombotic DIC are characterized by coagulation activation, insufficient anticoagulation, and persistent fibrinolysis suppression by plasminoid activator 1. However, DIC with fibrinolytic phenotype is characterized by coexistence of thrombosis and accompanying systemic pathologic hyperfibrinolysis. Type of DIC can change very dynamically depending on patient's condition. Early non-overt DIC can progress overt DIC in late phase. Early phase of DIC in sepsis is usually thrombotic, and that in trauma patient is fibrinolysis dominant. However, types can be changed dynamically in various ways. Like this, pathophysiology of type of DIC were various, and to reflect this, diagnostic criteria for DIC has been evolved over time. Then let's see previous DIC diagnosis criteria. The Japanese Ministry of Health and Welfare proposed this criteria for diagnosis of DIC in 1976. Their criteria involved evaluation of global coagulation tests, underlying disease, and clinical symptoms. Diagnosis of DIC requires total score of 7 or higher. In case of total score 5 or less, 2 positive specific laboratory tests are required. International Society of Thrombosis and Hemostasis published guideline for DIC in 2001. They divide DIC into overt and non-overt DIC and showed 2 different criteria. For overt DIC, they checked underlying condition like this. For patients without this condition, they recommend not to use this criteria. If yes, they recommend to check global coagulation tests, including platelet count, fibrinogen-related markers like FDP, prolonged thrombin time, and fibrinogen level. If score is 5 or higher, it is overt DIC, and less than 5 is suggested to non-overt DIC and repeat to 1 or 2 days again. Previous JMHW criteria had high specificity. It is good to confirm severe DIC, but hard to diagnose early DIC. This ISSTH criteria aimed to increase sensitivity by distinguishing overt and non-overt DIC to identify early phase diagnosis. By checking dynamic trend of DIC through repeated testing, both clinical and laboratory data were utilized. However, among the laboratory indicators, global coagulation tests such as platelet count and prothrombin times were used, while specific molecular markers were excluded. Although these markers are also important in DIC, but their use in daily routine follow-up may be limited. Through this criteria provide world standard reference for DIC diagnosis and can be easily used in clinical trials. New diagnostic criteria was suggested from Japan, 2005. As concept of systemic inflammatory response is emphasized in the sepsis and pathophysiologic relation between DIC and sepsis were revealed, SIRS is added to one of the diagnostic marker. As previous ISTH guideline was good to confirm overt DIC and use for standardization, Still, there are many cases where the criteria could not cover the DIC, even though it was positive in other criteria. New guideline from Japanese Association for Acute Medicine, JAM, suggests this scoring system. Cutoff value was little bit decreased to increase sensitivity. Object cutoff value was added in DIC assessment. Systemic inflammatory response were added. And DIC scores also, this score is associated with the systemic inflammatory response, vertical organ failure, and as well as mortality. So it is good to screen early phase of DIC and enable earlier intervention to DIC. With the previous ICT guideline, DIC was diagnosed too late, and there was not enough time to treat. With this criteria, it can diagnose early phase of DIC and secure more time to manage it. In 2017, diagnostic criteria for sepsis-induced coagulopathy was suggested. Authors analyzed patients with sepsis and found platelet prothrombin time as well as SOFA score were associated with mortality and set scoring score for sepsis-induced coagulopathy. Platelet count, prothrombin ratio, and SOFA score related to mortality. Likewise, SI score showed better correlation mortality rate than previous JAM-DIC score. Japanese Association for Acute Medicine reported new DIC criteria at 2024. As presented previously, concept of systemic inflammatory response syndrome was erased from recent diagnosis of sepsis. It was also excluded from DIC diagnosis criteria. This summarizes changes in JAM-DIC diagnosis criteria. Previous JAM score and new JAM2 score were investigated using prepared data set. A prediction of in-hospital mortality was similar. Also, survival curve for anticoagulant and control groups were also almost entirely similar. ISTH Scientific and Standardization Committee reported new criteria for DIC diagnosis recently. They defined DIC as an acquired syndrome characterized by intravascular activation coagulation with loss of localization. DIC is resulting both thrombosis and bleeding due to exhaustion of coagulation factors. DIC arises from dysregulated inflammatory and coagulation response. Inflammation and endothelial damage induced thrombic production arouse increased microthrombi formation that impairs organ perfusion and finally causes substantial organ failure. The latest diagnostic criteria for overt DIC proposed by ICAT removed the SOFA score from diagnostic criteria and introduced new items such as D-dimer and fibrinogen and strengthened the criteria such as platelet. In the early stage without clinical symptoms known as pre-DIC, coagulation is activated but detectable only by molecular markers. This can progress to sepsis-induced coagulopathy, which represents early DIC, and can be identified using routine laboratory tests. This stage is important because early intervention like anticoagulation is possible. If it worsens, it aggravates overt DIC, the latest stage, characterized by abnormal laboratory findings and clinical symptoms such as bleeding and organ dysfunction. This slide summarizes the DIC management strategy. ICTH suggests more specific treatment plan. Treatment for underlying condition is essential and mandatory. In addition, anticoagulant therapy using heparin, antithrombin, and recombinant thrombomodulin is expected to thrombotic DIC. In contrast, antifibrinolytic therapy using transaminase is used for hemorrhagic DIC. Both phenotype of DIC, supplementation of FFP, fibrinogen, and platelet is recommended in late decompensated phase. DIC can be explained as acquired syndrome from intravascular activation coagulation, dysregulated inflammation, and uncontrolled systemic propagation. DIC finally increased microthrombi formation and can be worsened to vertical organ failure. DIC is dynamic continuum. It can change non-overt to overt, thrombosis type to fibrinosis type, forward and backward. So DIC management should be individualized. To do this, continuous careful monitoring is required. In the beginning, I talk about the huge storm like this. DIC is like this image. huge dynamic, unregulated coagulation and inflammation burst out explosively. Patient would mean severe thrombosis and fibrinolysis. What shall we do? We have to monitor dynamic changes of DIC and try to keep balance. If we keep balance by continuous monitoring, we can secure patient survival in this situation. And this is my last slide. Left lower table is part of insurance cut in DIC-related lab. During my presentation, repeated monitoring is for DIC was emphasized again and again. To administer antithrombin, laboratory exam was necessary. However, insurance, especially automobile insurance, cut insurance coverage very frequently. Some kind of action is necessary. Thank you for listening.